What goes down when one of Hollywood's favorite comedians refuses to play by the rules of late-night television? Tonight we go inside the explosive showdown between Jim Carrey and Jimmy Kimmel that left viewers reeling, and a legend comedian being escorted off stage. The confrontation that network executives tried to suppress but couldn't keep under wraps. Before we get into all the shocking facts, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below with your 2 cents on who was in the right here. The feud between Jim Carrey and Jimmy Kimmel had been cooking beneath the surface for years. Their working relationship, once seemingly friendly on screen, hid a widening gap behind the scenes. Industry insiders whispered about their clashing egos and creative differences, but the public remained largely in the dark about the storm brewing. That is, until that night when everything came crashing down in spectacular fashion. Jim Carrey walked into the studio that evening with his usual energy, greeting fans and crew members with his megawatt smile. But those close to the actor noticed something different in his stance. There was a seriousness in his eyes, a resolve in his stride that indicated this wouldn't be just another promotional interview. He seemed intent, almost like a man on a mission, recalled one backstage assistant who watched Carr's arrival. We're used to him being goofy and joking around with everyone, but that night he was more subdued, more deliberate in his interactions. Kimmel's team had laid out the standard late-night fare. Softball questions about Carr's current project, maybe a humorous anecdote or two from the set, and possibly a pre-arranged comedic sketch. The formula had worked hundreds of times before with hundreds of celebrities, but Jim Carrey had other ideas. As the show's opening monologue comedian finished firing up the crowd and the production assistants made final adjustments, Kimmel approached Carrey in the green room for their standard pre-show chat. According to multiple sources on hand, the conversation quickly turned confrontational. "I'm not doing the usual song and dance tonight," Jimmy Carrey reportedly told Kimmel. "I think it's time we had an honest conversation for once." Kimmel, visibly uncomfortable with this departure from routine, tried to bring Carrey back around to the scripted talking points. "Let's just stick to what we discussed, Jim. The audience is here for entertainment, not scandal," but Carrey stood firm. "That's exactly the problem with these shows, isn't it? It's all surface-level entertainment, no substance. People deserve better than that." The show's producer intervened, reminding both men that they were minutes away from going live. With reluctant nods, they agreed to proceed as planned, but the underlying tension remained palpable. Crew members exchanged nervous glances, sensing the calm before the storm, when the iconic late night. Carrey bounded onto the stage with his trademark physical comedy flourishes, high-fiving members of the audience and executing an unplanned dance move that had the crowd on its feet. At first glance, everything seemed routine, just another celebrity guest spot on late-night TV. The interview started innocently enough, with Kimmel inquiring about Carr's new project and the actor offering animated answers that pleased the crowd, but astute. Viewers caught on that, behind Carr's performative excitement, something else was going on. Something seething just below the surface. 15 minutes in, the conversation took its first surprising turn. "You know," Jimmy Carrey said, suddenly cutting the subject short, "I've been thinking a lot about the role we play as entertainers, about the platform we're afforded and the way we decide to use it." Kimmel nodded along, trying to keep his composed expression, while surreptitiously trying to steer. Sure. Talking about platforms in your new movie, you play a character who..." "No, I'd like to complete this train of thought." Carrey interrupted, his tone still cordial, but with added firmness. "Because I think it's something your audience needs to hear." The studio grew quiet. This wasn't in the script. Each evening, tens of millions of individuals invite us into their living rooms through these programs. Carrey went on, sweeping her arm around the studio. "And what do we present them? Precisely honed questions calculated to build up whatever merchandise we happen to be peddling, pre-packaged anecdotes vetted and approved by publicity people. It's all publicity masquerading as conversation." Kimmel's smile pulled tighter, the unease visible in his eyes, as he saw that he was losing command of his show. "Well, that's a bit reductive. Don't you think we provide entertainment that ultimately serves corporate interests?" Carrey finished the sentence. "Let's be honest about that, at least." The crowd's response was divided, some applause in support, others squirming uncomfortably in their seats. Kimmel looked off stage, probably taking direction from his producers as to what to do with this unprecedented moment. "We're going to take a brief commercial break," Kimmel declared, his voice still in professional tone despite the clear strain. "We'll be back in just a moment with more of Jim Carrey." As the cameras cut off for the commercial break, witnesses said they saw Kimmel immediately approach Carrey. "What are you doing?" The host insisted, no longer playing his on-air character. "This is not what we agreed on," Carrey spoke calmly but firmly. "I'm just beginning, Jimmy. People are fed up with the phoniness, the contrived moments. They want reality." The show's executive producer rushed over, attempting to mediate the increasingly heated exchange. Staff members pretended to adjust equipment while stealing glances at the unfolding drama. "If you can't stick to the format, we'll have to cut the segment short," Kimmel warned his patience, clearly wearing thin. Carrey's response was simple. "Do what you have to do. I'm going to say what I came here to say." When the show resumed after the commercial break, the atmosphere had changed dramatically. The earlier playful banter was gone, replaced by palpable tension. Viewers at home could sense something was off, even if they couldn't quite identify what. "Let's talk about something real, Jimmy," Carrey said as the cameras rolled again, leaning forward in his seat. "Let's talk about how these shows pretend to give viewers intimate glimpses into celebrities' lives, when really everything is carefully calculated to generate viral clips and boost ratings." Kimmel's practiced smile faltered momentarily. "I think our viewers understand the nature of television, Jim. They're pretty savvy. Are they? Or have we conditioned them to accept this artificial version of interaction as reality?" Carrey countered, his trademark expressiveness now channeled into making his point, rather than generating laughs. "Every question you ask has been vetted. Every response I give is expected to fit within certain parameters. That's not conversation, that's performance." The audience, initially uncertain how to react, began to murmur amongst themselves. Some nodded in agreement with Carr's points, while others seemed uncomfortable with this departure from the expected light entertainment. "You know what's interesting?" Carrey continued, his voice taking on a more serious tone than viewers were accustomed to seeing. "From the comedic actor, I've been on your show 7 times over the years, and not once have you asked me anything that wasn't directly tied to promoting a project or sharing a pre-approved funny story." Kimmel's face wrinkled slightly. "That's not entirely fair, Jim. We've had plenty of genuine moments, have we, though?" Carrey interrupted, his eyes locked with Kimmel's. "When was the last time you asked a guest something that truly surprised them? Something that made them think, rather than recite practiced answers?" The tension in the studio was becoming impossible to ignore. Camera operators exchanged glances, unsure whether to continue with standard shots or capture the increasingly confrontational exchange. Kimmel, attempting to regain control of the situation, forced a laugh. "Well, this is certainly surprising me right now. Maybe we should get back to talking about your new film?" "And there it is," Carrey said, pointing at Kimmel with an expression of vindication, the pivot back to the promotional machine. "Heaven forbid we discuss something meaningful that doesn't serve commercial interests." At this point, the show's director frantically signaled to cut to another commercial break, but Carrey noticed the gesture. "No, let's stay with this," he said, addressing the director directly off camera. "The audience deserves to see what happens when someone goes off script." Kimmel's demeanor shifted, the affable host persona giving way to visible irritation. "Jim, I've always respected you as a performer, but this is my show. And there are expectations. Expectations from whom, Jimmy? The network executives, the sponsors. What about expectations from viewers who are tired of being fed the same manufactured content night after night?" The audience, initially stunned into silence by the escalating tension, began to react more vocally. Some cheered Carr's challenges, while others called for a return to the usual format. The division in the studio mirrored the conflicting forces at play in the entertainment industry itself. "You've built your career on pushing boundaries and being unpredictable," Carrey continued, gesturing animatedly. "But somehow when someone does that on your territory, it's a problem." Kimmel's patience was visibly wearing thin. There's a difference between being spontaneous within a format and deliberately hijacking someone else's platform. Is it hijacking to speak truthfully, to challenge the status quo? Carrey asked, his voice rising with passion. "I thought that's what comedy was supposed to do. challenge conventions, and speak truth to power. When did you stop believing in that? Jimmy. This direct question struck a nerve. Kimmel's expression hardened as he signaled desperately to his producers. "We need to take another break," he announced, no longer hiding his frustration. "Of course we do," Carrey responded with a knowing nod. "Can't have too much reality in one sitting." As the show went to commercial, the studio descended into chaos. Production assistants stormed onto the set while Kimmel stormed off, leaving Carrey sitting alone in his guest chair. The audience hummed and buzzed with excitement and confusion, many pulling out their phones to post what they were seeing on social media. Backstage, a heated argument ensued out of the audience's sight, but within earshot of a few crew members who later described the confrontation. "What the hell are you trying to prove here?" Kimmel commanded, his carefully guarded public image completely shed. Carrey sat through it all remarkably unruffled. "I'm not trying to prove anything, Jimmy. I'm just sick of being part of a system that rewards conformity at the expense of honesty. This isn't about honesty, it's about respect," Kimmel shot back. "You agreed to certain boundaries when you accepted the invitation to come on this show. Parameters that help to sustain the fiction that these interviews are anything other than long commercials." Carrey responded. "Maybe it's time somebody busted that fiction." The executive producer of the show stepped in with a suggestion that perhaps it would be best to cut the segment short and proceed to the next guest. Kimmel jumped at it immediately, but Carrey objected. "So that's how it works? When a person refuses to play by the rules, you simply cut them off and act like it never happened." Carrey pressed, "Isn't that exactly the issue with media today?" The producer tried to talk sense into Carrey, explaining the reality of producing a nightly television program. But the actor was unmoved. "I understand the limitations, believe me," Carrey replied. "But sometimes someone must say that the emperor has no clothes." As the commercial break wound to a close, a choice had to be made. Kimmel, his dignity partially restored, but annoyance still showing, returned to the set with the executive producer. "Jim, we've always had such a high regard for you as an artist," the producer started tactfully. "But tonight's visit isn't functioning within our format. We feel it's best if we wrap this segment and perhaps look at another time when we're all on the same wavelength." Carrey glanced from the producer to Kimmel, then out to the audience who were observing the off-air debate with rapt attention. "So, you're asking me to leave because I won't play by the rules?" Carrey parried loudly enough for the audience to hear. "We're asking you to be considerate of the nature of this show," Kimmel replied, struggling to keep up the professional façade. What followed would become one of the most publicized moments of late-night television history. As the floor director counted back from the return from commercial break, Carrey made a choice that would have lasting repercussions across the entertainment industry. When the cameras resumed rolling, viewers were not greeted with the customary two-shot of host and guest, but with Kimmel alone. His face was strained, his body posture tense as he spoke to the audience. "Unfortunately, Jim Carrey had to leave," Kimmel said matter-of-factly, a graphic departure from the usual warmth with which he spoke of his guests. "We'll be right back with our next segment after this break." But what the television audience did not see was what went on in the studio during that quick speech. Carrey had not, after all, exited the building. Instead, he had shifted to the front of the stage just beyond the camera frame. And as Kimmel went on to make his announcement, Carrey retreated back into sight, visible to the studio audience but not television viewers at home. "I didn't go away from Jimmy," Carrey said loud enough for the studio microphones to capture. "You're requesting that I go? There's a difference?" Seeing what was happening, the director quickly ordered camera operators not to shoot Carrey, but the deed was done. The studio audience collectively gasped at the drama unfolding. Kimmel, stuck in an impossible spot on live TV, tried to salvage the moment. "Jim, we agreed backstage." "We didn't agree to anything," Carrey interrupted. "You decided unilaterally that my point of view wasn't invited on your show." Security officers started making their way towards the stage, a development that was not lost on the increasingly vocal crowd. Some booed while others cheered Carrey on one of the most unruly atmospheres seen in the show's history. "This is the exact thing that is wrong with mainstream media," Carrey went on, even as security moved in towards her. When voices of discontent arise, they're shut down instead of being addressed. Kimmel, visibly flustered and angry, at last abandoned all pretense at civility. "Cut his mic," he directed the audio crew firmly. "Cut his mic now." As Carrey's microphone was silenced, he resorted to shouting. His voice rings out due to performance training, as he had many years of. "One should ask oneself why they are so scared of spontaneous moments," he shouted to the audience. "One should ask oneself what they are trying to protect." The studio descended into pandemonium. Security surrounded Carrey while the audience broke into groups. Some in support of Kimmel's authority over his show, others aligning with Carr's resistance to media manipulation. "Please remove Mr. Carrey from the stage," Kimmel directed security, his voice tight with rage. To the audience, he flashed an unconvincing smile. "We'll be taking a long-form commercial break." As the broadcast went to commercial breaks, dozens of audience members filmed the drama unfolding on their phones. Despite efforts from the production team to avert recording, several videos would go on to surface online. "You don't need to put your hands on me," Carrey told security in one of the widely shared clips. "I can leave under my own power, but I want everybody here to know what's going on. I'm being taken away, not because I was disrupting, but because I called out the artifice of this format." Another video from an audience member showed Kimmel sitting behind his desk, arms crossed, as security led Carrey out of the studio. "This isn't personal," Jimmy Carrey yelled out. "This is about a system that's terrified of authenticity." Kimmel's response, caught on multiple videos and subsequently transcribed when official audio was unavailable, was cutting. "No, Jim. This is about you making everything all about yourself." As always, that remark was a testament to the depths of the animosity between the two performers and fueled wide-ranging speculation about past off-camera incidents that may have led to this public breaking point. When the program resumed after its lengthy break, Kimmel spoke to the audience in a carefully crafted statement. "Well, that was certainly different." He began with a strained chuckle. "In all my years hosting this show, that's a first, but that's live television for you folks. We've had to make some changes to tonight's schedule, but the show goes on." He then presented the next guest as though nothing out of the ordinary had occurred, but viewers picked up on his stiff gait and occasional looks towards his producers for the balance of the broadcast. Outside the studio, a small group of people had gathered, having heard of the incident through social media. When Carrey appeared, instead of immediately departing, he spoke to the gathered fans. "What we just witnessed in there is a microcosm of what's happening all across our media landscape," Carrey explained. "We've created systems that prioritize conformity over truth." Videos of the spontaneous sidewalk rant would go on to garner millions of views, with many observing that Carrey seemed more intense and involved than in many of his recent performances. Back on the inside, Kimmel struggled to find his bearings, though he kept up a professional front. Crew members said that he was visibly rattled. During commercial breaks, he consorted with producers and executives in what seemed to be damage control discussions. By midnight, the affair was the #1 trending topic on several social media platforms. Excerpts from audience recordings were being posted all around the world, with public opinion sharply divided. Some viewers praised Carrey for pushing the artificiality of late-night television, while others condemned him for ambushing Kimmel on his own show. Kimmel's representatives issued a terse statement. "Tonight's broadcast was interrupted by an unexpected incident. We regret that we were not able to provide the scheduled interview with Jim Carrey." The deliberately worded text raised more questions than it answered, especially considering the evidence already in circulation online. Media analysts soon noted the statement's attempt to spin the incident as an interruption rather than a meaningful disagreement over media practices. By morning, the narrative had morphed from entertainment news into a larger debate about media authenticity and control. Big news outlets picked up the story, with leading media critics weighing in on its relevance. "What we saw was more than just a celebrity squabble," wrote one respected analyst. "It was a moment when the deliberately constructed facade of entertainment television cracked open to reveal the tensions and power struggles that are normally hidden." The day after the confrontation, Carrey broke his silence with a single social media statement. "Last night was not about Jimmy or me. It was about the space between reality and entertainment, and who gets to draw that line." I'm thankful that everyone shared their thoughts. Even those who disagreed with my method, change begins with dialogue. Kimmel was faced with a tough choice about how to handle the confrontation on his next show. Ultimately, he launched into a well-crafted monologue that tried to thread the needle between defending his show's format and recognizing Carr's right to his opinion. "We had a situation here last night which got a lot of attention," Kimmel started. His usual aplomb lost, Jim Carrey was strong about his opinions regarding talk shows and the media. And while I respect his right to those opinions, I also believe that we've developed a show here that means something to a great many people. Is everything rigged to some degree? Yes, that's TV, but that doesn't make it fake or meaningless. The reaction failed to deal with many of Carr's specific criticisms, instead falling back on traditional justifications about the nature of entertainment. Critics observed the contrast between Carr's eagerness to engage with systemic issues and Kimmel's retreat to safer territory. In the weeks that followed, the confrontation continued to resonate throughout the entertainment industry. Several other celebrities referenced the confrontation in their own interviews, some in support of Carr's positions, others in support of the traditional talk show format. Perhaps most notably, certain hosts began experimenting with less formal interview formats that allowed for more natural conversation. Whether this represented a lasting shift or simply a temporary reaction to the controversy remained to be seen. For Carrey, the confrontation marked a turning point in his public image. Long best known primarily for his comedic performances, he was now being talked about as a voice of truth in an industry commonly criticized for its superficiality. Kimmel, on the other hand, found himself on the defensive, his carefully constructed image as an everyman host now complicated by perceptions that he had acted as a gatekeeper against authentic expression. While his base remained largely loyal, there was an undeniable shift in how he was viewed. The most lasting influence may have been on audiences themselves. Having caught a glimpse behind the curtain of late-night television production, many viewers reported watching subsequent episodes with a more critical eye. The Carrey-Kimmel confrontation didn't simply change how we think about those two individual entertainers. One cultural critic observed, "It changed how we think about the whole ecosystem of celebrity media. Once you've seen how tightly controlled these spontaneous conversations are, it's impossible to watch them the same way again." Regardless of individual opinion about who was right or wrong, Carrey had caused a moment of collective media literacy, encouraging viewers